Season 7 of Diablo 4 is finally here. It is launching later today, and I have the ultimate leveling guide for you. This is going to be a Fire Summon Sorc. This build was a lot of fun. If you like summoning and you like fire, this is the build for you. I'm going to cover the entire breakdown of how this planner is set up. I have it set up in different phases so that as you go through your leveling process, you'll be able to keep up and follow along with all of the different steps inside of this guide. How this is going to work. I have it broken down by level 1 to 25. Level 26 to 40, and then level 41 to 60. When you start with level 1 to 25, you're going to have very, very minimal affixes and very, very minimal tempers. Tempering is going to unlock at level 10, so it is very important that you get your tempering started right away. But all of the aspects that are going to be on all of your gear is only aspects that you can get inside of a dungeon. It is nothing that you're going to be hunting for in order to get your build to run. The way that this is going to work, I have all of the aspects listed here right next to where the dungeons are. If you come into the game and you open up your Codex of Power, if you were to search for whatever it is you're going to be looking for that's listed on the planner list, it's going to pull up something that looks like this right here. You can unlock by completing the dungeon. If you use this where it says pin, you click right here and that's going to open up a pin on your map. You go and you follow where the line goes to, and then you'll see that this is the dungeon that you're going to need to go to in order to get that aspect unlocked. So this is a really great way to go from using the planner in-game and allow you to get those aspects from those dungeons right away. These aspects are not mandatory. You do not have to go complete all of these dungeons, but if you do want to set your character up for later levels, you can always go start leveling inside of these dungeons, and that's going to be a really great way to get yourself started. On the bottom, I also put the important aspect that has a chance to drop. When that drops, you're going to go over to the final variant here, and then you're going to look and it's going to replace on the amulet. So you just follow along with, if you get the drops early, then you're going to place that right there. If you don't ever find this drop until you hit level 60, then all you're going to do is you're going to continue to follow along with this guide right here, exactly the way that is listed out. So when you look at your gear stats, you just click right here for gear stats, you're going to have very, very minimal affixes and very minimal tempers that you're going to look for. Mana per second is going to make your quality of life go through the roof. And then if you go down to the weapons, we're going to be looking for Elemental Surge. Elemental Surge is going to add a massive amount of damage to your character. Now, I know we replace our weapons very, very often, but with the theme of this season being Whispers, we're going to get a boatload of materials. The Whisper count has been increased. The amount of times that we're going to be able to turn them in is going to be increased. So we're going to have more materials than normal and more gold than normal. So enchanting and tempering right away is going to be a really, really great way for this to work. For the rings and for the amulet, you're going to look for things like mana on kill and then some movement speed just to make the game go a little bit faster. If you look here and as we go through each one of the variants, you're going to see just a little bit more until you get a nice full set. You don't have to have this as you go through, but these are going to be what you're going to be looking for as you level up. Going back to the starting one, we're going to look at all of the aspects here. We're going to start with Disobedience. This is going to give you armor when you attack. Unwavering. Taking direct damage has a chance for you to reset a defensive cooldown, something like your ice armor or your flame shield. Intercom. There is going to be a point where we're going to be standing still because we're going to be casting our firewall, we're going to be casting our hydras, and we're going to be casting our familiars. So you can take advantage of this buff a little bit. No matter what, it gives us an increase to damage. Snow Veiled aspect. Ice armor makes you unstoppable and grants you 25% damage reduction. Ghostwalker. When you become unstoppable, you're going to gain additional movement speed. Then we're going to be running Storm Swell. You're going to deal increased damage when ice armor is active. This amount is increased by another 15% against frozen enemies. Then we're going to be running Incendiary Aspect. Lucky Hit. Damage with your pyromancy skills has a chance to restore mana. Prodigy. Using a cooldown is going to restore mana as well. Umbral. Crowd controlling an enemy is also going to give us back resources. So that's the aspects. Now we're going to take a look at the skill tree. The skill tree will actually be the same for all of the variants. The reason is I put a level path in here. What the leveling path does, it shows you the direction that I went when I put all of my skills in. It starts from the very first one, and then it goes in order of how I place the skills. So you're going to use this as you go through a new level. If you were to just fill out everything as you went down right in order, you would run out of points before you got some of the most important skills. So how we're going to do this, I'm going to start at the top and I'm just going to cover each skill as we get to it. But make sure that when you're doing this, you follow along with the leveling path so that you do get the right skills in the right order. We're going to be starting with Firebolt and into Enhanced Firebolt. This will allow us to unlock our Fireball. Now, Fireball actually isn't going to be on the bar. We're just going to be using this for the enchantment, but we're going to go all the way down through Greater Fireball. Your Fireball deals 10% burning damage you've applied to enemies as additional direct damage. We'll talk about the enchantments after we get through the skills, and we'll talk about why we're going to be using Fireball there. We're going to go 3 points into Elemental Dominance. Your core skills deal 12% increased damage when cast above 50 mana. We're going to go into Flame Shield, and then Enhanced Flame Shield. Flame Shield has a 50% larger burn radius, so it's going to burn enemies. It also makes us invulnerable to damage. 1 point into Teleport, all the way down through Shimmering Teleport. This is going to give you 30% damage reduction for 4 seconds every single time that you teleport. We're going to be using Glass Cannon. You're going to deal 18% increased damage, but take 6% more. 1 point into Elemental Attunement. Critical strikes have up to a 7% chance to reset the cooldowns of one of your defensive skills. This can only happen once every 10 seconds. 1 point into Energy Focus so we can unlock Dampen Lair. You gain 6% damage reduction while you have a barrier active. Coming down, we're going to be maxing out Hydra. We'll go all the way through Summoned Hydra. Hydras also burn enemies for an additional 100% of its base damage dealt over 6 seconds. For our second summon, we're going to be taking Familiar. We're going to go through Invoked Familiar. While Familiar is active, you're going to gain 10% increased damage to skills that deal damage of the same type. With Familiar, you can have up to 6 of them running around at one time, so that's 60% increased damage if you can keep all 6 of them up. 1 point into Precise Magic. This is just going to give you a little bit of extra lucky hit chance. 3 points into Align Elements. You gain 9% damage reduction against elites for each second you have not taken damage from one, up to 60%. This bonus persists for 3 seconds after taking damage. Protection. Using a cooldown grants 30% of your maximum life as a barrier for 3 seconds. Primordial Bonding. Gain a stacking bonus for each active summon up to 10 summons. 6% summon damage, 6% movement speed, 12% mana regeneration. There's a pretty big buff right here if you can keep 10 of those up. 3 points into Mana Shield. Every time that you spend 100 mana, you're going to gain 30% damage reduction for 5 seconds. Coming down, we're going to be going into Inner Flame. 3 points here. You deal 18% increased damage while healthy. Devouring Blaze. Your Pyromancy skills deal an additional 30% increased critical strike damage. 1 point into Firewall, all the way down through Mage's Firewall. Enemies continue to burn 3 seconds after leaving the Firewall. Coming down, we're going to be going into Elemental Synergies. Your Frost, Shock, and Pyromancy skill damage is increased by 3% for each of the skills that you have equipped on your bar, as long as they're the same type. The bonus is doubled if all of your bars are the same type. We're not going to have that, but we're still going to get a big increase to our damage from this. 1 point into Fiery Surge to unlock Endless Pyre. You're going to deal 18% increased burning damage. This bonus is increased to 75% to enemies while they are affected by more damage over time than their total life. We're also going to take Soulfire. Your Pyromancy skills cost 12% less mana and deal 6% increased damage. You're going to double that bonus if you stand still for 2 seconds. If we stand still for 3 seconds, you take advantage of Intercom, so we're also going to be taking advantage of Soulfire as well. 3 points into Evocation, you're going to get 12% cooldown reduction. And then finally, we're going to be taking Combustion. Your burning effects deal 60% increased damage and an additional 25% of your bonus damage to burning enemies. Let's take a look at your enchantments so we can talk about the Fireball. When you kill an enemy, they explode in a fireball for 50% of its damage. So when enemies die, they explode. We're also going to be running Familiar. Each time you summon a non-familiar conjuration, you have a 25% chance to spawn a familiar of the same element. So as we're casting our Hydras, we have a chance to spawn these familiars here as well. For the runes, I only went with basic runes. These are the ones that I found while I was leveling. I went with Yaks. Every time that you use a healing potion, you're going to gain 200 offerings. Combine that with Lum. Every time you gain those offerings, you're going to get 2.5% of your resources back per 5 offerings. We're going to go with Sir or Kerr. Cast 5 skills, then you're going to become exhausted. You're going to gain 300 every 3 seconds, basically. Then you're going to be running that with Ton. Invokes the Sorcerer's Meteorites, dealing damage to the enemies. Now we're going to look at the Occult Gems. The way that these are going to work. Pointed Fingers. Your summons deal 15% more direct damage to hexed enemies. We're going to be running Hex of Flames, so as long as that hex is on the enemies, the summons deal 15% more damage. Hungering Void. While you have an aura active, pull nearby enemies towards you every 8 seconds. We're going to be running Aura of Lament, so that's how we're going to use those powers together. And then Killing Ward. While you have 3 or more Eldritch powers slotted, you gain 25% increased movement speed and 15% increased critical strike chance. For this one, we're going to be running 1, 2, 3 different Eldritch powers. That's going to activate that power there as well. So we're going to start with Doom Orb. This is going to be a ball of energy that's going to swing around you and is going to do a ton of damage to enemies. Aura of Lament. When you first strike an enemy, it is afflicted with an Aura of Lament that slows it and other enemies by 70%. For each enemy inside the Aura of Lament, you gain 3 primary resources each second. If the initial enemy dies, Aura of Lament is passed on to another nearby enemy, retaining the duration. Lasts 30 seconds. Only one enemy can be afflicted at one time. May only occur once every 30 seconds. At rank 15, you can now apply Aura of Lament to 2 enemies. So when you attack somebody, they're affected by this aura. Well, the enemies are inside of this aura. You're going to gain back your primary resources. If the initial enemy dies, it gets passed on to the next one as long as there's an enemy around. You can only do this once every 30 seconds. Once you level up your power and it hits rank 15, then you can apply 2 of them at one time. Hex of Flames. You have a 60% chance to apply Hex of Flames. Hex of Flames is going to deal fire damage each time that you deal damage to the target. At rank 6, Hex of Flames explodes, dealing damage to nearby enemies when you land a critical strike. Wave of Woes. Release a Wave of Woes, damaging an enemy with your skills. Wave of Woes deals additional shadow damage and echoes its damage to all nearby enemies of the same type. At rank 5, damage is increased by 15% each time the damage is echoed, and is guaranteed to echo at least 5 times. It may strike the same target multiple times. So if you're fighting just one enemy, this will echo 5 times and do additional 15% increased damage every time. Shaken Soul. This is going to apply vulnerable damage every time that we use an Eldritch effect. For the Eldritch effects, we're going to be running Hex of Flames. That's going to deal damage and make enemies vulnerable. At rank 10, damage from the Psyche and Growth and Decay effects will also apply vulnerable at half the duration. Twilight Warding. Every 5 seconds, gain a barrier for 5 seconds absorbing damage. At rank 12, Twilight Warding is going to reflect back projectiles while it's active. So anytime anybody shoots anything at you, it's actually going to get reflected back as long as this is active. For your Mercenaries, we're going to be running right here. This is going to be a great defensive option for you. If you wanted to run something else, you definitely can, but this is going to give you Fortify, it's going to give you Armor, and will also give you a Taunt with some extra damage. We're going to be running Altkin as your Opportunity. The skill is going to be Storm of Fire, and then Opportunity is going to be Firewall. The final thing that we're going to go over, and this is important, at the very bottom is going to be the Season 7 Leveling Sheets document. This is the document here, and these are all of the leveling guides that I have made for this season. So if you wanted to try something else out, you definitely can do that. This is going to be the start of it. It's going to walk you through the whole entire leveling process. Step by step, what to do. We'll have some how-to guides, some interactive maps, some pictures of where to go, what to look for. It's going to have everything all the way down to gear checks, what they are, when to do them. And even as a bonus, we'll include a little bit for level 60 when you make it there. That's all I got for the build. Hopefully you enjoy this. Let me know what you think in the comments of the build, and also stop by the live stream. I'll be on before the servers go live and all day through the launch of the season. I'm also live every night. Stop by, say hi, theorycraft with me. Catch you on the clip side.